17,000 Americans.
17,000 people died because of heat, only in those few days. That is absolutely madness. Hi and welcome back. So we have a heat wave right now in Germany, and that is why I want to watch today the comparison of the British weather to the American weather by our favorite guy. I love him so much, Lost in the Pond. But before we go into it with him, please make sure to hit a like and a subscribe. That would help me so much. We are so close to the 30k. That would be absolutely awesome if you do. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, let's get right into it. English is not the easiest language.
The year was 1913, the place Death Valley, and this was not the beginning of a vampire novel.
Okay, tell me in the comments which hint, which Easter egg have I missed, because I don't have no clue what he's talking about.
Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to heat waves. Both countries have experienced their fair share of them over the centuries. As someone who orbited the sun 26 times while living in Britain...
Okay, he means that he lived for 26 years in Britain. Okay, nice way to say it though.
I vaguely recall some of my homelands. I say vaguely because the thing about heat waves is that they don't linger in the memory like a blizzard or a hurricane. They don't yield shaky YouTube videos or Michael Bay set pieces. They're just a period of perspirational misery. In 2006, Britain experienced its hottest ever July, with the thermometer soaring to what I thought was a quite ridiculous 99 degrees Fahrenheit. One night...
Okay, wait, let's do the math, because you told me in one of my last videos, thank you so much for that, what is like Fahrenheit in Celsius. 99, so we minus 32 is 67. That means around 36, 37 degrees Celsius. That is pretty okay, I think. We in Germany have mostly, there's at least 2 or 3 days in the summer, or at least one, where we have always over 40 degrees Celsius, something like 104 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe around that.
My wife and I camped out in my brother's living room in London. What happened next was a lesson in why you should never sleep on a blow-up mattress atop a flat in 99-degree heat in a country where AC is fiction. Rumour has it that our sweat still haunts the ceiling. But what is it?
That is a thing. I'm sorry for pausing so much, but that is a thing. We have no AC in Europe. The only thing we have is, wait a second, this thing here, a fan. That is the only thing we have. Yeah, and otherwise we just have to sweat. I know, it's dumb, we should have AC, but we don't. I don't know why.
A heat wave. A heat wave is not just a case of hot weather. If it was, the southern US would be embroiled in perpetual summer heat wave, with temps often reaching what on earth degrees Fahrenheit. No, a heat wave is a period of heat relative to the usual temperature of a place or season. So when measurements exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Britain, as they did in Cambridge last year, it's definitely a heat wave. And I know...
Interesting, that means even the North Pole and the Antarctic can have heat waves if it's just still freezing, but way less freezing than before, so way higher temperatures.
I know that because this has only happened twice in the nation's history. In parts of the US, it's an annual tradition and will only become more frequent this century. Even while living toward the Great Lakes, I've encountered the dreaded 3 digits more than once. Between this and America's extreme winters, there's a reason I miss British weather. After all, British heat waves ain't got nothing on America. If you don't believe me, let's take a look at a selection of America's greatest heats. While not the hottest, this heatwave is notable for its persistence. In July and August of 1896, it impacted several populous cities such as New York, Boston, and Chicago over a period of 10 days. That's 24 hours longer than Michelle Phillips was married to Dennis Hopper. During those 10 days, the temperatures in those cities remained above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, even at
90
night.
Degrees Fahrenheit is, yeah, something around over 30 degrees, right? So something like 31, 32 degrees.
Worse still, the
In the
humidity
night.
was about 90%, and this was in the days before aircon and Ben & Jerry's Chunky Monkey. Before entering into a bet with William Howard Taft over who could rock the best presidential facial hair, Teddy Roosevelt was New York City Police Commissioner. During the heatwave, he dished out ice creams to residents, which leads me to think he might have missed his true calling in life. To my mind, the world was truly robbed of mustachio-flavoured ice cream. Just as 2020 feels like a runaway train that's devoured 12 bottles of Dennis Hopper, 1936 felt the same way, but in black and white. America was in the throes of its worst ever depression. The Dust Bowl continued to engulf the Great Plains.
Tell me what the Dust Bowl is. I have never heard of that. Is this like a storm, or is this... I don't know. What is the Dust Bowl? Or, yeah.
And the nation endured one of its worst heat waves in modern history. The year's one bright spark was when Olympian Jesse Owens stormed to 4 gold.
Oh, I know this. This Olympia was, I think, in Germany, because the Nazi Party was, of course, in 36 reigning in Germany. And it was like a slap to the face with one of the most popular disciplines of Olympia, the sprint, the 100-meter sprint, is like dominated by a black person, which is, of course, not Aryan. If you like this video, please hit a like, and if you want to see more of me, I would love if you subscribe. Thank you so much for that.
Medals in front of German Chancellor and ardent snowflake Adolf Hitler.
Exactly.
But even as that was happening, temperatures in multiple states had exceeded 100 degrees for more than 10 consecutive days. State records had to be rewritten. To this day, 13 states have yet to best the records they set in the summer of 1936. This includes North Dakota, where temperatures soared to a high of 121 degrees. Nationwide, more than 5,000 Americans died due to the heat. Crop devastation was widespread, and it just happened to follow one of the coldest winters in US history. To this day, 2 states have yet to best the records they set in February 1936. This includes North Dakota, where
Look at this amount of snow. That is more than a person. That is 2 meters and more. 2.5 meters. I don't know. 8 feet, probably. I think so.
Temperatures plummeted to minus 60 degrees. 1936, kicking North Dakota's ass since 1936. In the early 50s, Gene Kelly was singing In the Rain. This would have been a huge kick in the teeth to people in the central United States because a persistent and record-setting heatwave was wreaking havoc there.
Okay.
Some areas experienced worse drought than during the Dust Bowl. In 1954, the year of Dennis Hopper's first television appearance, 11 states endured 22 days of 100-plus weather, and the Super Soaker 50 was still the stuff of a madman's dreams. In July of that year, my current...
What is a super... Oh wait, that was the pistols for the water, right? The water pistols. Yeah, I loved them as a kid. But I never got the cool ones. That were always for the other kids. You always had like the cool kids had the cool ones, and you always had the small ones, and you were always like, oh my god, why don't I have the cool ones? But that were like those big things, right?
State of Illinois recorded its highest ever temperature, with the thermometer reaching 117 degrees in East St. Louis. Rumour has it that microbes are still hiding under Eads Bridge to this day. This is not an actual heat wave. This is a Motown hit by Martha and the Vandellas. Yeah, it's a great song, but we don't have the rights to it. Can we...
Which thing do I miss here? Tell me in the comments.
Skip to 88. Thanks. In America, 1988 is remembered less for its heat wave and more for the droughts it exacerbated. It's also remembered by me for an unusual lack of Dennis Hopper films and the line, "Senator, you're no Jack Nicholson." I think I dreamt that one. But the weather that year was no laughing matter. Weather stations recorded an unprecedented number of days between precipitation in many parts of the Midwest. In the spring, Milwaukee endured 55 days without rain or snow, a phenomenal feat for anyone who's been to Milwaukee. At its worst, the drought covered almost half the nation. Forest fires ran rampant, most notably at Yellowstone National Park, which suffered the largest in
Look at that. Oh my god.
its history. Forest fires ran rampant, most notably at Yellowstone National Park, which suffered
Look at that.
the largest in its history. The event led to one of the worst dust migrations since the 30s, and schools were forced to close in Dakota of the southern variety. Now this is all terrible, you're probably
South Dakota.
thinking, but aren't droughts and heat waves two different things? Well, yeah, it's just that this particular drought happened to coincide with one of the most stunning heat waves since
Oh no.
1936. It's estimated that
That
between
means probably very many of the wood or forest fires, right? Because if it's very dry and very hot, that probably doesn't mean anything good.
4 and 17,000 Americans died as a result. Adjusted for inflation, it's between 4 and 17,000 Americans.
17,000 people died because of heat in this year, only in those few days. That is absolutely madness. 17,000 people
died as a result. Adjusted for inflation, it's the third costliest natural disaster in US history behind Hurricanes Katrina and Harvey. In many ways, I've lived two lives, one in Britain and one in America, and a third one in an alternate universe where I have marginally better teeth and go by the name of Emma, but we don't talk about that. The 2016 Southwest heatwave is the only one included on this list to have occurred during my second life as a US resident.
Okay.
The good thing was, it was 2,000 miles away. During the month of June, temperatures in the states of California, Arizona, and Nevada looked more like supercentenarian statistics. You had numbers like 110, my age in Time Lord years, all the way up to 125.
125? That much? I mean, I don't know exactly what it is in Celsius, we will calculate, but that is much. How much is this? Oh god, that is over 50 degrees. That is over 50.
That measurement was taken in Needles, California, a place that has literally never been hotter. Of course, California knows a thing or two about heat waves. Not only is the state frequently riddled with droughts and wildfires, it's also home to the hottest recorded temperature the world has ever known. The year was 1913, the place Death Valley, and this was not the beginning of a vampire novel. On July 10th of that year, the temperature maxed out at 130.
That is incredible. 134 degrees. That is over around 58 degrees Celsius. That is crazy.
34 degrees. It happened before. It will happen again. Just please not in 2020. That's it for this episode. I hope you're enjoying the warm weather while remaining safe. And welcome to my new studio, which is still a tad echoey. We're going to get a rug down here and some extra acoustic panels. Either way, this was made possible by my patron.
Can I tell you something? I'm here in the basement of my house because it's the only room, because we have very high ceilings, that is not completely holly and echoey. So I can really feel him. But damn, that were crazy temperatures. You know, we have our 42 degrees Celsius. That is nothing. That is nothing in comparison to that. How do you? Okay, yeah, you have AC, right? That is how you survive that. But you can't go outside there. You will get cooked. That is crazy. 134 degrees Celsius, Fahrenheit, around 60 degrees Celsius. That is mental. That is mental. What I've learned from the US so far, in general, it doesn't matter about army, about food, about anything, you know, about animals, about people, about now also weather, is that the US loves extremes. The US absolutely loves extremes. So no matter what you know, always go way beyond it in the lower case, you know, like for example minus temperatures, and go way above in the positive temperatures, for example, or the same thing in the military, and then you have a little bit of a glimpse of how it is in the US. I have always this feeling it's like this in the US, which makes it, of course, very variety. And you know, if you want to have such a heat wave, you don't have to leave the country to experience it. Although, who really wants to experience it, right? That's the other thing. So that was absolutely crazy. I have not, you know, I have expected it maybe. I mean, if you do such a video, maybe the US is a little bit higher. I don't know, maybe, you know, 48, 50 degrees Celsius, but next to 60 degrees Celsius. That is absolutely mental. Absolutely mental. Yeah, tell me, what is the highest temperature that you have ever gotten, and also the lowest? And if you don't want that I have to calculate too much, you're very incentivized to also put it in Celsius, so that I have a spectrum of what have you ever experienced. At least, please, you don't have to have it on the same place, but at least in the US. So maybe you were in Alaska once, that they're probably the deepest temperature, and maybe you were once in Florida or something, and then they're the highest. So I would be very curious to see what is like the maximum that you ever had. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, then keep liking, subscribing, and we see each other in the next one. Bye!